The little girl hadn't taken a single step in 14 months. Not one. Not even a shuffle. Not even a trembling, desperate attempt in the middle of the night when nobody was watching. Maya, 7 years old, with brown eyes that used to chase butterflies across the backyard and legs that used to carry her up trees and down slides and through sprinkler water on hot July afternoons, sat perfectly still in her wheelchair and stared at the floor like the answers to every question in the universe were written somewhere in the linoleum. Her legs worked. That was the part that broke her mother every single time. Every doctor said the same thing, in different offices with different diplomas on the wall and different ways of folding their hands across expensive desks. Nerves intact. Muscle response normal. No structural damage. No spinal compromise. No neurological deterioration. The body was ready. The body had always been ready. Something else, something none of them could locate on a scan or measure on a chart, had simply stopped giving permission. Rachel had heard the phrase, psychosomatic response, so many times it had lost all meaning. The first specialist said it gently, like an apology. The second said it clinically, like a diagnosis that ended the conversation. The third said it while already reaching for the door handle, like it was someone else's problem now. 3 specialists. 2 neurologists. 1 child psychologist who worked out of a glass office downtown and charged $400 per session and spoke to Maya in a soft, practiced voice that Maya never once responded to. Not a word. Not a nod. Just those brown eyes, dropping to the floor, closing the world out 1 millimeter at a time. Rachel was not a woman who gave up easily. She had raised Maya alone from the time Maya was 2 years old, after a marriage that ended quietly and without drama, just 2 people who had stopped being the right people for each other. She had worked 2 jobs for 3 years to build a savings account she was proud of. She had learned to fix her own car, cook real meals after long shifts, attend every school event with a smile that she meant. She was the kind of woman who handled things. Who figured things out. Who did not allow herself the luxury of falling apart before her daughter was asleep. But the savings account was gone now. Every dollar of it. Specialist fees and therapy copays and the cost of a medical-grade wheelchair and the hotel room near the children's hospital 2 states away where the neurologist with the international reputation had reviewed Maya's case for 45 minutes and then told Rachel, with genuine kindness, that there was nothing physically wrong with her daughter. That the healing, when it came, would not come from medicine. Rachel had driven home in silence for 6 hours while Maya slept in the back seat, and she had not cried until she was inside her own house with the door locked and the lights off. That was 4 months ago. Since then, Maya had grown quieter. Not in a frightening way, not withdrawn or dark or distant in any way that alarmed the school counselor. Just smaller. Like she was taking up less space on purpose. Like some part of her had made a private decision to stop expecting things to change and had found a kind of peace inside that decision. She still laughed at cartoon animals. She still asked for extra syrup on her pancakes. She still reached for her mother's hand in the grocery store. But she had stopped looking at her own legs. Stopped asking the questions she used to ask in the early weeks, "Will I walk again, Mom? Do you think I'll walk again?" As if she had quietly answered the question herself and moved on. Rachel found that harder to watch than the tears had been. The school was good about it. They had made every accommodation without being asked: ramp access, adjusted classroom seating, a designated space in the cafeteria. Maya's teacher, Mrs. Ellison, was warm and patient and checked in with Rachel every Friday afternoon with a brief, honest update. The other children had adjusted the way children do, with a speed that would have surprised most adults. Maya was included. Maya was liked. Maya sat by the window in the mornings because she liked the light, and her classmates had simply rearranged themselves around that preference without discussion. That was where she was sitting the first Monday morning Daniel arrived. He came through the side entrance at 7:15 with a maintenance cart, a thermos of coffee that smelled like it had been brewed the previous evening, and the particular unhurried quality of a man who had learned to take the world at exactly the speed it offered itself to him. He was 41. Broad-shouldered, with the kind of hands that had done real work for a long time. He wore the gray uniform of the school district's facilities department and moved through the hallway with a quiet efficiency that didn't announce itself or ask for acknowledgement. He had transferred to this district 3 months ago. His previous school had been 40 minutes across town, closer to the apartment he no longer lived in, from a life that no longer existed in the form it once had. He had a daughter once. Lily. She had been 6 years old and obsessed with toy cars, specifically the small die-cast kind that you could race across any flat surface and then argue about who won. She had died 3 years ago, suddenly, from a heart condition no one had known was there. Daniel had not returned to the previous school after the grief leave ended. Too many hallways that remembered her. He didn't read student files. It wasn't his job and it wasn't his nature. He noticed Maya the way he noticed everything, without making a project of it. A small girl by the window. Wheelchair. Eyes on the floor. The kind of stillness that wasn't peaceful, exactly, but had made a decision to look like peace. He registered it and kept moving. He had floors to clean and a schedule to keep. But on Tuesday morning she was in exactly the same spot, in exactly the same position, and something in the sameness of it stopped him for just a moment at the edge of the hallway. He didn't approach her. Didn't speak to her. Didn't smile in the careful, deliberate way that adults sometimes approach children they felt sorry for. He just set his cart against the wall a reasonable distance away and got to work on the floor nearby, and if his work happened to keep him in that section of hallway a few minutes longer than strictly necessary, there was no way to prove it. On Wednesday he brought the cars. 2 small die-cast cars, one red, one blue, that he kept in the front pocket of his uniform without any particular plan for them. He had carried them for 3 years. He set them on the floor in the hallway while he worked and nudged the red one gently with the toe of his boot. It traveled about 4 feet and stopped near the wall. He looked at it. Looked at the blue one. Gave the blue one the same treatment in the opposite direction. Then, under his breath, in a voice that was absolutely not performing for anyone, he said, "And the red takes the inside lane but the blue has better traction on this surface, folks, this is going to be close." He heard nothing. He didn't look up to check. He went back to work. But on Thursday morning, when he set the red car on the floor and gave it the same boot nudge and began his commentary again, a voice said, very quietly, from the direction of the window, "The blue one is faster." Daniel looked up slowly. Maya was watching the cars. Not him. The cars. Her eyes were tracking the red one where it had stopped against the baseboard, and there was something in her expression that was not quite a smile but was the thing that lived just underneath one, waiting for permission to surface. He looked at the red car. Looked back at her. Said, with complete seriousness, "The blue one has an unfair aerodynamic advantage and I've filed a formal complaint." Maya's mouth twitched. He went back to work. That was all. No follow-up. No lingering eye contact. No adult enthusiasm rushing in to make a moment bigger than it wanted to be. Just 2 cars on a hallway floor and a man who went back to mopping like nothing significant had occurred. But something had. Something small and exact and real had shifted in that hallway on a Thursday morning, something that no glass office or soft therapeutic voice or $400 session had been able to locate. Not because Daniel had tried harder than the doctors. Not because he knew something they didn't. But because he hadn't been trying at all. He had just shown up. Brought the cars. Said the ridiculous thing. And then gotten out of the way and let Maya decide what happened next. She was already looking forward to Friday. And she hadn't looked forward to anything in 14 months. He came back every morning. That was the thing nobody had thought to do. Not every week with a scheduled appointment. Not every other Thursday at a time that worked for the calendar. Every single morning, without announcement or expectation, Daniel arrived at 7:15 with his cart and his thermos and his 2 small die-cast cars, and he set up in the hallway near the window like it was simply the next logical thing a person did with a Tuesday. No fanfare. No progress reports. No gentle checking in about how Maya was feeling or whether she wanted to talk about anything. Just the cars on the floor and the commentary delivered to no one in particular and the work getting done around it like the whole arrangement was completely ordinary. Maya started arriving earlier. Not dramatically earlier. Not in a way that announced itself. But Rachel noticed, on the second week, that Maya was already dressed and waiting by the front door at 7 o'clock, which was 20 minutes ahead of their usual schedule, and when Rachel asked if she was excited about something at school, Maya just shrugged and said she liked getting the window seat before anyone else took it. Rachel didn't push. But she filed it away in the part of her heart that had been very quiet for a long time and felt something move in there that she hadn't felt in months. Something that felt cautiously, carefully like hope. By the end of the second week, the cars had acquired names. This had been Maya's doing entirely. The red one was Gerald. The blue one was Captain Fast, a name that Maya delivered with complete authority and zero irony, and which Daniel accepted without question and immediately began using in his commentary with the kind of seriousness that made Maya press her lips together to keep from laughing. Gerald was slower but strategic. Captain Fast was reckless and overconfident and prone to overcorrecting on turns. An entire personality had been established. An entire competitive history was being constructed one morning at a time, and Maya was the one building it, offering new details and rulings and official judgments from her position by the window while Daniel nodded and incorporated everything into the ongoing narrative without missing a beat. He never asked her to come closer. Never suggested she might want to get down on the floor and race them herself. Never looked at her wheelchair in the considering way that adults sometimes did, like they were calculating the distance between where she was and where they thought she should be trying to get to. He just raced Gerald and Captain Fast across the hallway floor and lost, consistently, because Maya had declared Captain Fast the superior vehicle and Daniel respected the ruling. Rachel didn't know any of this yet. Maya hadn't told her. Not because she was hiding it. Just because some things, when they are new and small and still finding their shape, need a little time before they can survive being talked about. Maya understood this without being able to articulate it. She just knew that the hallway was hers in a way that she didn't want to share yet. That Daniel was hers in a way that had nothing to do with ownership and everything to do with the particular safety of someone who expected absolutely nothing from you. She had spent 14 months being someone that people expected things from. Expected to try. Expected to improve. Expected to respond to the therapy voice and the kind doctor eyes and the careful encouragement. She was exhausted by expectation in the way that only someone who loves the people expecting things of them can be exhausted, not with resentment, but with the deep tiredness of wanting so badly to give people what they needed and having nothing left to give. Daniel didn't need anything. He was just there. Racing his cars and losing on purpose and going back to his mop like the morning had been a complete success regardless of outcome. It was the most rested Maya had felt in over a year. The third week, something shifted. It happened gradually, the way real things always do, not in a single dramatic moment but in a slow accumulation of small ones. Maya's wheelchair had migrated. Barely. A foot, maybe two, from its position by the window. She had moved herself closer to where the cars raced without deciding to do it, the way you lean toward a fire in winter without issuing yourself any instruction. Daniel hadn't commented on the repositioning. Hadn't looked at the new distance between Maya and the cars with any readable expression. He had simply set Gerald and Captain Fast on the floor at the new natural starting point and begun his commentary. Maya was close enough now to see the small scratches on Captain Fast's blue paint. Close enough to have an opinion about the racing surface and whether the section of hallway near the water fountain had a slight grade that gave Gerald an unfair gravitational advantage on the return run. She delivered this analysis with precision. Daniel filed a second formal complaint on Gerald's behalf. It was a Thursday morning, the beginning of the fourth week, when everything changed. Daniel was pushing Captain Fast along the floor with his index finger, providing live commentary about the car's controversial decision to take the wide line through the hallway's main straightaway, when he shifted his weight to follow the car's trajectory and his boot caught the edge of his own maintenance cart. It wasn't a fall, exactly. More of a controlled collapse. He went sideways, shoulder catching the row of lockers with a sound like a single loud knock, thermos hitting the floor and rolling, Daniel ending up half-seated against the lockers with his legs out in front of him, an expression of complete dignity that was entirely unconvincing given the circumstances. Captain Fast continued rolling, driverless, and came to rest approximately 1 inch from Maya's front wheel. There was a moment of pure silence. Daniel looked at the thermos. Looked at Captain Fast. Said, with great composure, "I meant to do that." Maya laughed. A real one, the full kind, the kind that comes from somewhere below the chest and can't be managed or minimized once it starts. And in the middle of that laugh, without any instruction from any conscious part of her brain, she leaned forward in her wheelchair and reached, arm out, hand open, and grabbed Daniel's sleeve. Not to help him up, exactly. Just reaching. The automatic human reach toward someone who has tumbled sideways, the instinct that doesn't ask permission before it moves. Daniel felt the grip on his sleeve and went very still. Maya felt it too. The reach. The extension of her whole upper body forward and out. She felt her own hand on his sleeve and then, in the sudden quiet of that recognition, she felt something else. Her feet. On the floor. Both of them flat and present and connected to the ground in a way that shot straight up through her legs like a current finding a wire it had been looking for. She looked at her feet. Then she looked at Daniel. His face gave her nothing urgent. No excitement flooding in to overwhelm the moment. No eyes going wide with the pressure of significance. He just looked back at her with the same steady, unhurried expression he brought to everything, like this moment and every moment before it had been equally worth showing up for. Maya looked at her feet again. She stood. Not with effort. Not with the straining, trembling, desperate quality that everyone had been bracing for across 14 months of hoping. She just stood, the way you stand when your body has always known how and has simply been waiting for a morning when nobody needed it to prove anything. One motion. Continuous. Like standing up was the most ordinary thing she had done all week. She took a step. The linoleum was cool through her socks. Another step. Toward the hallway. Toward the window. Toward the place she had been sitting every morning for weeks, seeing it now from a height she had almost forgotten. She walked to the window and stood in the light and looked out at the school courtyard and didn't say anything because there wasn't anything that needed to be said. Daniel got up off the floor, quietly, and picked up his thermos and checked that Captain Fast was undamaged. He set the blue car on the edge of the nearest windowsill like a trophy being placed on a shelf. Rachel came at afternoon pickup. She walked through the main entrance and turned into the hallway and stopped. Maya was standing at the far end, near the window, holding Captain Fast in one hand. She was standing. Just standing there, in the afternoon light, like it was something she did every day. Rachel's bag dropped from her shoulder. She walked forward 3 steps and then her legs stopped working and she went to her knees on the linoleum hallway floor and stayed there, hands over her mouth, tears coming in the way that only the tears of 14 months of held together, gotten through, refused to fall apart can come, all at once and without any intention of stopping. Maya walked to her. 7 steps across the hallway floor. And put her small hand on her mother's face. Daniel was at the far end of the hallway, near the maintenance closet, returning his cart to its place. He didn't look over. Didn't linger in the doorway to witness what he had made possible. He just picked up his mop, and went back to work, and let the afternoon belong entirely to them. Captain Fast stayed on the windowsill until the following Monday. When Daniel arrived at 7:15, it was still there. And Maya was already waiting.